Time is Tuesday, September 9th, 7:25 a.m., and this is the Podley Weekly. Welcome back. We're in the grind. We've officially entered the grind. We are on the roller coaster up to the top of the season, and week one is in the books. Welcome to week two. I am your host, Nut, as I will give you a tour throughout the entire DVFFL league. A week one that was massively eventful, and we will definitely get to that as we go through the segments. But for those who are familiar and those who are not familiar, this is the Podley Weekly. This is where we go every tier. We break out the tiers. We walk through the Nut Report, which is going to be served on the website. And we will go through each one of the teams and how we've broken them up into tiers. We have 5 teams in Tier 1, 5 teams in Tier 2, and 3 teams in Tier 3. And then we'll go through the weekly points and any other observations that comes to life through the statistical analysis, especially through the position leaders. And then we'll move on to our main segment. But as for week one, first impressions, well, I got ribbed for putting myself in my own category and my own tier coming out of the draft about what the best teams are looking like, or at least projected to be. And I feel like I'm in my own tier, scoring 130 points with everyone else, the next highest being 108. So, I'm willing to take an apology tour, so to speak, from everybody else on that. But, yeah, great week one reveal for myself. Great week one reveal for some of the other teams. Some pretty close games. From a week one perspective. Always love, though it's not, I don't love it when it's me, but I also love it when I'm observing it. Love when we have a Monday Night Football matchup that goes down to the wire, and we certainly got that with Dylan Alec there. With almost a 1.7 or 1 point, it's very close. Basically, of course, comes down to a touchdown by Adunze. And I was going to have the start of this segment be to Dill being like, well, welcome to the Adunze What If Club, because there was a lot of classic Adunze Caleb Williams action happening in that game last night where it's like, well, he's wide open, but Caleb Williams is getting, cut in half essentially. So the ball is going to sail over Adunze's head, and you're going to think to yourself, what if that ball was 5 feet lower? Adunze had no one behind him, sort of thing. But there he goes. Adunze gets the win. On a garbage touchdown, essentially, which is always tough to see if you're Alec, considering he was kind of successfully holding off 3 different players for the majority of the game until the very end. And I honestly thought it was going to be garbage time Jordan Mason, but it wasn't. It was Adunze. So, Dill, welcome aboard. Your wide receiving core, the cheapest, I think. Well, not the cheapest because you spent too much money on Abuka, and I guess a little too much money on Adunze, but definitely the most unproven wide receiving core in the league, and they came through for you this week, but we'll see if that continues to happen next week. Across the board, though, we had some surprise, the teams that everyone kind of ribbed a little bit. I think Mike has been labeled one of the worst teams coming out of the draft, and he got the win. We have always a surprise, Cody and Brandon both winning their matchups, though Cody winning it in the lowest form fashion with a 75-point win. So that's going to be a low. Brandon beat Mitch, and Mitch was, pretty much unheard of throughout GroupMe as he got kind of destroyed by Brandon. It was almost a 30-point win there. And on the flip side, mentioning it, but the teams that were bad last year, Peyton and Mitch, are bad this year. It's not a surprise, but at the same time, you would hope with both teams kind of taking on a bunch of money, especially Mitch, that it would get better. And reality is, let's take in last year a little bit. Mitch finished the regular season 3-11. He obviously went to the Sacco, so if you do that math a little bit, he is in total from last year, he's 4-13, and you add in this loss this year, he's 4-14 in his last 18 games, or 4-8 in the last 22 games, 4-18 in the last 22 games. Not great. That's not a lot of winning, especially when it spans over 2 years. And the same can be said for Pate. I mean, Pate finished last year at 4-10. That was at the end of the regular season. Obviously, losing the Sacco, you go 4-13, and now he's 4-14. So similar metric there for the two teams that did not get a lot of wins last year, and it seems to be a trend that has continued at least into week one. But the general theme is week one is week one. In general, if you're 0-1, you have a 51% chance of making the playoffs. If you are 1-0, you have a 55% chance of making the playoffs. Those things don't dramatically change until you get your second win. If you are 2-0, it's 73%. If you're 0-2, it's 33%. And at that point, that's when that's when the fork on the road really kind of takes place. The best case scenario for any team that's 0-1 is try to go 1-1 because you actually increase your odds to 56% chance of making the playoffs. So the season is not lost. There will be a lot of calamity this week. There will be a lot of teams, a lot of people kind of declaring it over for some teams or some bad things, and similar to the players that we know not to touch in week one, like the MVS or the classics. Oh man, now I can't even think of his name. He's on the Texans and he's on the Dolphins, but the types of players that just kind of blow up on week one and then never to be seen again. That we can't deem some teams the best and we can't deem some teams the worst after 1 week of results. We do need more data. And speaking of data, why don't we step through the Nut Report? So, Nut Report week 2, we have our Tier 1 teams, Tier 2 teams, and Tier 3 teams. As I will remind you all, a lot of details and a lot of information still to come, not until we get more of it, which is usually around week 4. So you're going to see a giant, I don't know what you want to call it, a light peach, maybe a tan-colored box that says more to come in week 4. This is going to cover remaining schedule, who's a top 5, mid 5, and bottom 4 team, possible seed positions. At this point, it's just too early to say. So currently, the Nut Report really just kind of follows a more of a power ranking situation. And I've talked about this every year. The early stages is the most loose clay that we're going to have, especially when you're trying to interpret what is going on. So I'm okay to have this be a power ranking in my opinion. And then as the things start to solidify, mostly around mid-season, this becomes more and more of a situation in which I believe, this has to be more of your playoff guide. You want to keep this pretty straight and narrow. And it'll follow the rankings essentially and just kind of cover tiebreakers. But for now, it's power ranking. And it's going to go chalk for the most part. So Tier 1, we have myself, Nick, Christian, Brandon, and Mike as our 5 seed. For myself, again, 130 points, 7 touchdowns, most touchdowns in the league so far, most points in the league so far. Get the W. It's a pretty easy number 1. Nick, 108 points. Again, great showing, especially with Brock Bowers' injury. Kind of showed out. His team just massively performed, which is always good to see. 5 touchdowns on the year. Pretty good. Christian squeaked it out. 102 points. Again, he gets the W. He's the 3 seed, 5 touchdowns. Nice big win against Cal. Broke the curse. So, that matters. I almost moved it up above Nick, but, it can't go that far. That's 108 points is way more than 102. At least that's what math says. Brandon is the number 4 seed, 92 points a game. He also has 5 touchdowns. So there's maybe some room to grow there. And then Mike is our 5 seed, only averaging 89 points a game, which isn't fantastic considering. That is basically almost directly on league average for this week. So 89 points. It's still 89 points. A W is still a W. He squeaked one out. Again, I got a 4-point win. I think there's a lot of wins this week that were kind of whoa, as we'd like to say, that was closer than you think. But I think the biggest thing that comes out of Tier 1 is we have a rookie Nick showing out. For everyone who was trying to hold back Nick or say that he's going to suck, he got a week 1 win. I know, Dill, I think you've got a bet that you are going to finish higher than Nick so far, and obviously you're keeping pace, but Nick has got a lot more points on you, so you got a long way to go. Tier 2, I think this is where things get interesting. Our Tier 2 teams are Jaden, Dylan, Cody, Cal, and Alec. Now, there are some decisions made here. Jaden is 0-1. Dylan and Cody are 1-0, and yet I have Jaden above both of them. The reason being that Jaden scored 103 points, the third most amount of points in the league. And, Dylan and Cody scored less than the league average. So I can't necessarily have them. I guess Dylan was just right on league average, similar to Mike. But I don't like the nature of Dylan's win. And this is where the subjectiveness comes. if Dill, you're going to get all uppity about it. The best case scenario you could have possibly been, if I was going statistical, is that you'd be the 5 seed. So it's not like you're really moving up that far. But yeah, Jaden, I think, had a much better, stronger performance. Only 4 touchdowns and got 103 points. So there's obviously our favorite term, positive regression potentially there. It's a lot of points for not a lot of touchdowns. So I'm feeling really good about Jaden's team. Dill's got the win, reliant on Abuka having a great game, and I just worry long-term prospects of the types of players on Dill's team and what they have to do to get a W. If this is a best-case scenario for Dill's wide receiving core and it only got him 86 points, that's not great. I don't imagine that there would be really much of a world in which Dill starts 3 wide receivers at any point going forward, outside of maybe Wandale, but even then, what are we doing? So yeah, it's gonna be this, and got 19.6 points from Abuka and 9.7 points from Odunze. I'd consider that a great day in the office, but that is also assuming that those 2 guys are gonna get 3 touchdowns between them, and I don't know if that's always gonna happen. Cody, he sits here at the 8 seed. I almost had him fall behind Cal just due to the points disparity because Cody only got 75 points in this game. A win is a win, and at some point the win does matter more than anything else. He did play one of the easiest teams this week in Pate. Peyton had just a terrible game. I just think there's a little bit more hope for Cody. It is classic Packers football, though, that that Golden comes out of the game with an injury. But maybe there's more to come. I gotta say though, gotta address the elephant in the room. I was really, and I firmly still believe that this trade will start to skirt itself forward. And I should have started the whole show off with this. In fact, the trade initially was going to be like the whole main segment because I had passionate feelings about this trade. DJ Moore and ETN for Davante Adams, and Cody gives up $5. Yeah, I don't know. There's always that rule of like if I'm giving up the best overall player and I'm paying money, this is the old Tanner rule. Maybe you didn't do good in the trade. And then the trade itself, it almost like worked itself out in real time. Like, oh, ETN looks incredible. Well, how would we have known? It looked like he was going to be a 3-way backfield. So if we had a live trade reaction show 5 minutes after the trade, I would be like, Cody, you did it again. You're screwing the pooch here. Like, I'm not sure why you're trading for ETN and DJ Moore, 2 of the most hated and polarized players in this league. And at the very least, if you're going to trade someone or you're going to trade for 2 guys like that, you want to make sure that maybe at the end of the day, you want a ripcord backup plan, like a safety net of like, well, if these guys don't work out for me, maybe what I saw didn't really pan out, I can still like flip them to the rest of the league because the rest of the league has some type of feeling about them. And the answer is no. We all hate both those players. So this is yours to own, Cody. And of course, it comes to life that ETN is just a fucking monster again. After all the rumors of his demise about being a 3-way backfield and things like that, he looks like he's the Bucky Irving to Cohen's Jaguars backfield. And on top of that, not only looking great against Carolina, they trade Tank Bigsby immediately afterward, which just really nicely solidifies and evens out that whole backfield. It's looking pretty good for Cody. Looks like he's got himself a really nice running back. And then in addition to that, got DJ Moore. And trust me, the first drive of the Bears game, I was like, fuck, DJ Moore, look at that. He's actually going to do something. And then he kind of resorted back to the old DJ fuckface, as Alec likes to call him. With a nice fumble loss there, 5.6 points, a lot of potential hope. But I think net the trade at this moment in time has sort of netted out for Cody. I think it's big W's took place in the real world that I didn't expect to happen. In the grand scheme of things at the end of the year, I have so much more faith in Davante Adams delivering some insanely good games, and I know that this week wasn't one of those games. But in general, I'm going to lean on the side of Nick got the better of Cody, even though the Cody situation has very much improved since the moment the trade took place, and I don't know if Cody even had an inkling about that, but if he did, I want to know your sources, Cody. We're going to have to investigate you for, we're going to do a little drug test for you because how the fuck did you know that was going to happen? But net, I'm on the side of Nick, but I'll say it one more time. It's closer than you think. But generally, don't love giving up the best player and paying money. That's generally the rule that I will live and die by. And we have Cal and Alec. Cal suffered a devastating loss to Christian there. He was really relying on his historical matchups to take him away, and they didn't, and he got the L. He only got one touchdown for scoring 95 points. For a team that I had not a lot of high hopes for in terms of point scoring, the team was kind of pushing things together. CMC with a calf injury, blah, 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 blah. For getting 95 points and only one touchdown, that's what we would call the old nut classic there. That's pretty good. Again, positive regression possibly could happen here. And then Alec is the last team in this tier, 85 points, almost squeaked, went out over Dill. Dill isn't that far ahead of him in the tiers. I feel like they're really close together. Unfortunate loss. Alec, on the other hand, had 5 touchdowns and only 85 points, right below league average. So, you're hoping for a little bit more there. Hopefully that is not the end of the... that's not the most touchdowns Alec's going to get, but he's going to get other things like yards and points in general. So, not a great week for Alec, especially to lose on Monday Night Football, but better days to come. And then lastly, our shit show. We have Tier 3. Tier 3 is headlined by Tanner, Jesse, Mitch, and Peyton. Again, took some liberties here in regards to what is the worst team and what is the best team here. You would think that I would put Mitch as the worst team, considering, he had the least amount of points. But no, it is actually Peyton that is the worst team. I have a little higher hope on Mitch, a little bit, micro bit. Both teams, Mitch and Peyton, Mitch scored 1 touchdown and Peyton scored 2 touchdowns. Not great. They both got blown out, but I think it's the fact that Peyton played Cody and Cody had a 75-point game and a win. And there's not many games in the DVFFL in which if you get 75 points, you're going to get a win. And yet Cody kind of fell into that. And Peyton didn't capitalize on what is generally a very below average score. I mean, I would say, I don't know what the global DVFFL playoff, point average is, but I can say it's somewhere around 90 points a game. I mean, guesstimating that. Yet not enough to come up. So that's going to take you to the 14th seed. For Mitch, he lost 92 points, only scored 1 touchdown. I can sort of see a slight glimmer of hope, but I'll talk about his team a little bit later. Tanner and Jesse, Jesse was dealing with the second most points scored in the week. He didn't do much better himself with 70 points and in 5 touchdowns. Very bizarre scoring there, kind of similar to Alec and other question marks that I might have. How the fuck do you score 70 points and 5 touchdowns? I'm that sounds like all the touchdowns are your 70 points. And then Tanner, it was close, but it really wasn't close at the same time. He was done, and then Mike kind of flirted around with it because the Ravens' defense was just kind of sliding backwards a little bit. But yeah, Tanner, 85 points, 4 touchdowns. Just not a great week. Probably one of those, Bill Belichick quotes of on to Cincinnati sort of energy with Tanner. That wasn't great, but the season is young, and there's more to go. So, yeah, you can see in the weekly points breakdown, you can see the league average there is 89.59. The low-scoring week in general. Really low-scoring week. I think we're going to look back on this, and kind of kind of mirroring the NFL season of oh, okay. Everyone was just kind of working their shit out. It's going to get better now. So, curious to see how we score out. We have position leaders. Again, the playoff average there is from last year's playoff average. So you can kind of map yourself against that. No real crazy things now. I think the only thing that's kind of bizarre is that we only have 3 teams in week 1 that are above the playoff line for running backs. So some pretty low running back scores. I think Mitch only getting 7.8 points from his running backs. That's not going to help. That's a pretty low score. Tanner, same thing with wide receivers, only 7.3 points from his wide receivers in week 1. That's usually a score of 1 wide receiver. And then, tight end is an absolute forever crapshoot for everybody. It's Travis Kelce is leading the charge with the most points for tight end scoring. So thank you guys for the whatever generous name you were giving my Mahomes and Kelce stack on Friday night. I think it was Suctivate. Was that one of them? Or did I just make that one up? But yeah, there he is, number 1, week 1. We'll take it. And everything else kind of follows the same mapping. I think I'll have more reactions about where people fall in their team construction, I think, as the weeks progress, just as we get a little bit more information, because a 1 week reaction isn't enough. But you know what is enough? A little bit of a segment break. Oh, before that, obviously, historical stats are all updated. They are all there for your viewing pleasure. Nothing significant. Again, I'm always on the watch for who's close to 100 games. The only thing for us to watch this year that is a kind of a milestone moment is Dill is 3 wins away from 100 games. He would be the 3rd team to join the 100-plus club, which is currently just myself and Cal. And we have Peyton is 4 losses away from the 100-loss club, which he'd be joining Brandon and Cody as the only other teams that are in the 100-loss club. Long term, there's also a world where Dill could join the 100-loss club. He's also 9 games away from that. Jesse's 7 games away from the 100-loss club as well. And Jaden is 11 losses away from the 100-loss club. I don't see that one happening, but, got to keep a dog ear out there for that. And, across the board, everything else is there. So we go. Let's go into the segment. So we spend all, off season, so to speak, worried immensely about our keepers. We think about our keepers constantly. We're thinking, maybe some of us are thinking only for 2 weeks before the draft. Maybe others are thinking long term. Maybe others are overthinking their keeper options. But nonetheless, keepers are a really big deal. There are holdovers from last year. And oftentimes when we get to this point of the season, like we have our big keeper celebration, it's a whole thing. Everyone thinks about their keepers. It's the kind of the construction of their build. And then week 1 happens, the bullets start flying, and suddenly you're like, oh, yeah, I don't know. I guess I have that guy on my team. And you don't really think about the keeper of it all. So I want to kind of remind ourselves of what did we see? What was revealed from our week 1 keeper decisions? And collectively, it was a very underwhelming week, which I think kind of mirrors the league itself. We could extrapolate the whole thing out and say, like, well, this is maybe an indicator, like the keepers and how they perform is an indicator for how the league is going to do. So if all the keepers do well, that means the week is going to be a good week. And if the keepers do poorly, well, it's going to be a bad week. I don't know if I want to extrapolate that far, but you could. There were no game-shifting plays. There's no monster performances. Just a lot of good, not a ton of great. So I've broken these into 3 groups, and I think it's a very simple thing, not like a complex tier system situation. Very straightforward. The 3 groups are teams that looked at their keeper and go, "Wow, that was great. Good shit." There were teams that looked at their keeper and said, "Oh, okay, that's nice. Better days ahead." And there's teams that looked at their keeper and goes, "Well, that's garbage." And some of these things can kind of like allude into like general team construction, but I'm going to try to keep this focused on the keeper. So I'm going to list out all the names and their scores, and I'm going to give a little anecdote on each one. So for the teams that kind of enjoyed top keeper performances for the week, this isn't the best performances they've ever had, but this is a week where you look down at your phone and you smile to yourself and you see your keeper doing better than you even imagined this week. And those teams were no particular order, of course, but there are descending in points. Dill, Baker Mayfield with 22 points. Peyton, Achane, 13 points. Puka, Cal, 13 points. And Alec, Kyron Williams, 12.9 points. So for Dill, leading off this group, again, no particular order, but quarterbacks generally score more points than skill position players. Dill leads off this group with a performance that won't pass the eye test. Mayfield was under 50% accuracy the entire game. The offense didn't look great at all. And as I said during the week, this means 3 things. Either A, the Tampa offense is going to be the same as it was last year, but still Mayfield prevailed with his 3 touchdowns. Or B, the Falcons defense could be sneaky good. Or C, both can be true. I don't know what to make out of Mayfield's performance. I didn't love seeing how inefficient it was, but at the end of the day, he did get 3 touchdowns, 22 points, or anything over 20 for a quarterback, in my opinion, is good enough. You're happy. You're happy with that one, especially in a week 1 that was a little low, and Dill needed all the points he can get. For Peyton, he got Achane for 13 points. It was a soulless victory. Even when the Dolphins became like a shitfish, Achane can prevail for now. So that's something that you can take away. This season for the Dolphins is going to look like an absolute nightmare. So for Peyton to get anything positive out of that performance against the Colts, that's a W. so don't take it too far. But long-term prospects of Achane, I am significantly worried. Cal got what he imagines Puka does every game, score over 10 plus points and get hurt 3 times progressively more and more serious throughout the game. I think I saw Puka go to the locker room bleeding at one point, saw Puka getting evaluated for concussion, saw Puka like working out a knee thing on the side of the line. It was a classic Puka game for 13 points. And of course, I guess, if it was my player, I'd be absolutely petrified as I watched my, truly best player just get absolutely destroyed each and every week. And every single time he goes to the sideline, it could be that, not season ender, because I think Puka is one of those types that he will never go out for the season. He'll just go out for long stretches of the season. But nonetheless, I would hate this experience, and we already got the whole fucking thing on week 1. So, Puka doing Puka things, scoring great, looking good, but goddamn, he's getting absolutely destroyed every single time he touches the ball. And then lastly, we have Kyren Williams. The naughty is back. And for Alec, Kyren will always mean a little bit more. His performance, the worst of his bunch, probably had the most impact on his weekly scoring output for the vibe that was provided to his team. It wasn't a great week for Alec, and he was trying to hope that he could squeak one out. But, Kyren Williams coming through, getting that touchdown, 12.9 points. It's just the old reliable there with Kyren Williams and Alec. So definitely no complaints there from Alec. He's just kind of like, there you go, Kyren, get right back on that horse from last year, and let's keep riding. As for the next group of people, this is the just fine. These are performances that were the silent head nod to oneself as you kind of look down at your score. You're just kind of thinking to yourself, there was thoughts of misplays. Maybe there's a missed opportunity here and there. Nothing that you're fully fretting over, but it's a plate of food that still leaves you hungry. And those teams are Jaden with Jaden Daniels for 20 points, Tanner with Chase Brown for 11 points, myself with Bucky Irving for 10 points, Nick with Bowers for 10.3 points, Mitch with Brian Thomas with 8 points, Mike with Laporta 7.9 points, and Brandon for McConkey 7.4 points. This is our largest group, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about each one of these. So with Jaden and Jaden Daniels, how convenient, Jaden Daniels, 20.12 points. Anytime, like I said, a quarterback goes over 20 points, it's a good day. But expectations should be a lot higher for Jaden Daniels. He's the most expensive quarterback ever kept in the DVFL. Again, kept for $28. And the expectation is that he should perform up to the same par of the 3 major quarterbacks, the Jalen Hurts for $41 and the Lamar and Josh Allen's for $33. He is correctly priced as the 4th of that group of QBs, but to underperform in the way that he did is not what you're expecting. I think that Jaden was probably expecting Jaden Daniels to be more in like the 28, high 20s, maybe low 30 kind of outing for the week. And especially playing the Giants, I know they might have a really great defense. We might look back and say, whoa, he got 20 points off of a defense that doesn't give up 20 points. But for now, week 1 reveal, a little loss there. Next, we have Tanner. Chase Brown scored 11.1 points. Tanner saw what he needed to see. Chase Brown was the lead back. He scored touchdowns. What he didn't love seeing was a Bengals team that was incapable of moving the ball smoothly against the Browns. I don't know. This is always something that the Bengals seem to have a struggle with, which is week 1 or the Browns. And I'll talk about that later on with Burrow. But, it's you're just hoping to get back to the same humming offense that we had that was happening last year. And I think a lot of the Bengals players were priced in, not to say that, that Tanner had to pay a price, but all the other prices for the Bengal players were assuming that we were just going to pick up where we left off. And we didn't. We did not pick up where we left off. Chase Brown sort of picked up where he left off. I think, 11 points is, again, something where you're kind of hoping for a tad bit more. Maybe 16 points would really make you go, that's great. But 11 is not bad. And the same thing can be said, for me with Bucky Irving, 10.5 points. I kind of see Brown and Bucky not only in like draft boards were they similar, but I think throughout this year they're going to be kind of like DNA strands. They're going to be basically mirrors of each other. They also have their fates similarly bonded to this expectation. For me, what I got to see similar to Chase Brown is I saw a backfield takeover, a receiving touchdown, which is great, and a win for the team. But as I said with Baker, The Bucks offense looks a little too straight right now. And again, I don't know if that was the defense, but it just seemed like there was nothing surprising, no fun running plays that we saw from last year. Even watching Red Zone, usually like Bucky was always good for like one of those, just like he dances through a line, he breaks a tackle sort of thing, and we go. And we didn't get a single one of those. We kind of got like a very like almost like a Tony Pollard version of Bucky Irving, where it's like, okay, run straight, tackled. Okay, all right, run straight again. All right, tackled. All right, and that sort of thing, I hope is just more of a case of just the week one than the whole season. But still, getting a receiving touchdown is a positive thing. Didn't see that last year that much, so love to see that. Nick with Brock Bowers. This is a unique experience in this group because Brock Bowers scored 10.3 points, and Bowers was absolutely teaching. Out of anyone in this group, Bowers was the one that was like, good Lord, that guy is so good. And if he completed the day out without getting injured, which is the reason why Bowers is even here, he probably would be in the group above us. And he's borderline that, because getting 10 points from a tight end is an absolute miracle at times. But the thing that I think the reason why Nick is in this group is that he's looking at his tight end one, Bowers, and he's wondering if he has a tight end one next week. Health. Like, we don't know what he said after the game, that he feels fine, but he also did say for Monday night, we'll see if he plays. You love the mixed messaging there. I'm sure that the Raiders medical staff, one of the greatest medical staffs in the league, will be sure to take care of Brock Bowers in the most appropriate way possible. And of course, I'm saying that with as utmost amount of sarcasm as humanly possible. But hopefully Bowers is feeling better. Don't want to lose him. But great week one reveal in terms of usage. Things were looking great there, but not great to have your main guy deal with an injury on week one. Next on this list, we have Mitch. Mitch with Brian Thomas, 8 points. Mitch got a gimmick touchdown out of the group. It was a cute little end around the goal line that resulted in a touchdown to cap off Thomas's blistering 20-yard day. Only 20 yards total in that offense. ETN, I guess, was eating everything up. So for Mitch, you can look at this, and I hate using the rule of like, well, if you take that touchdown away, it was a really shitty day. That rule of how you play the game or how you look at fantasy football stats is a way that you can only find yourself just cherry picking stats. I'm not going to do that. The touchdown happened. No one's going to take that away. It just wasn't a great reveal of what this offense, at least from the passing perspective, is going to be. I had similar high hopes. I mean, when Cal picked up Trevor Lawrence, I was like, well, I kind of see it. I'm surprised he didn't get drafted. Maybe let's see what happens here. Because, let's say Cohen can really make him, he can make Baker Mayfield really good. He could probably make Lawrence really good. I mean, I would assume from a talent perspective, Baker is and Lawrence, I mean, they're kind of shades of each other, except, Baker just has a little bit more of like the want to that Lawrence doesn't have. And I think, Lawrence's decision making is pretty horrible. And Lawrence doesn't really have like great of an arm if you think about it. And like the running is so awkward and never really puts his body in a position to actually succeed. But aside from all those other points, they're kind of similar, I guess. They're quarterbacks in Florida. That's something. They had draft pedigree, I suppose. But I'm getting off track. Brian Thomas didn't do great. He scored a touchdown, but definitely something that leaves Mitch wanting a little bit more. Then we have Mike. Again, Laporta 7.9. On the opposite end of the scale of expectations, Mike, he is the only owner that is keeping a tight end, and with that comes a little bit different expectations of points. Nearly 8 points is actually kind of a huge win. It's a great day for the Lions tight end. I think that the team itself looked pretty dreadful, and to get 7.9 points out of Laporta is great. I mean, I think for Mike, that's a positive sign because last year it wasn't the same Laporta. It wasn't the same Laporta. Get it? Same Laporta as we got in year one Laporta. So getting him back to like an 8-point thing, kind of just being right there on the 10-point mark or hovering around the 10-point mark. It's a good situation for Mike. So looking at this kind of like all right, this is cool. A little bit more positive energy than negative energy from Brian Thomas. And then last in this group, we have Brandon with Ladd McConkey, 7.4 points. This is the most exciting 7.4 points Brandon could ever ask for. Why? Because we saw the Chargers actually open up the fucking playbook and pass the rock all around the field. And it fucking worked. Like between Keenan Allen and Ladd, you could watch some like route porn essentially because they put these two guys on the same side and they're so shifty. They basically do the same things, and it's like two slot players basically playing out of the same spot, and it's just up to Herbert to basically make the choice between the two. And Ladd didn't get the big performances. He got 7.4 points in a really lovely season opener for the Chargers. I think it's a very positive sign, and I think this might represent more of a floor game than anything else. There's a couple of reasons why I think that. One is, like, I don't anticipate the passing numbers to stay that high. I think that was obviously a surprise to the Chiefs to, like, look, we're not a running team, we're a passing team, and they just torched the Chiefs. It could mean a couple things. One, it shows that the Chargers can do that, so if they ever need to rely on that as an option, they can, which is always good, because I feel like the Chargers last year started becoming a little one-dimensional with Herbert's injury and just running all the time. And two, I just think that, like, with McConkey, it also allows for all the other assets around, like Quentin Johnston and in Keenan Allen and even fucking Conk. It showed that those are all viable people that you need to guard, especially Quentin Johnston. So that theoretically should take some coverage off of McConkey, and better days to come, is at least my opinion. So that was that group. And our final group, last and certainly least, each situation has its own unique flavor, but the taste on Sunday, a little something that tastes a little like ass. And there's only 3 teams here. We have Cody with Burrow, 8.8 points. Christian with Tracy, 3.5 points. And Jesse with Collins, 2.5 points. Let's start with Burrow. Let's talk about the positives. This was the most points Burrow has scored in a week 1 since 2022. That's 8.82 points. So that's really good. If we want to take, that's great, actually. It's been a long time since we've scored anything good. The bad is that this was against the Browns, and I think expectations for both player and team are a little higher than beating the Browns 17-16. And Burrow was getting basically mauled by Myles Garrett. I thought, and maybe this is an evergreen headline that I saw for the Bengals, but I thought they fixed their offensive line. I mean, I feel like every year they put something to it, and they don't seem to be able to accomplish that. I think better days are to come for Cody, but similar note, as I said with Chase Brown, I think everyone assumes, considering we have 2 Bengals keepers, historically speaking, the Bengals are usually a garbage team, but we have 2 Bengals keepers. Traditionally speaking, that's not they're bad, and we were expecting them to be right where they left off last year. And every year is a new year; it's a snowflake. We don't know what to expect. So I'm assuming we'll get back to some form or another of what we had last year, but for right now, that week 1 reveal for the Bengals in general isn't the best in the world. Not exactly what you're hoping for. So Cody kind of has to look at Burrow and go, we could do better. Next, and probably the most dire out of all the groups here, and it's not a surprise, but we have Christian. 3.5 points with Tracy. I would say for you, Christian, prepare for the floodgates on this one, because the most surprising keeper pick and the one that had the most unsurprising results, a split backfield on an offense that has been mentally lost since 2023. I think I think you might have gotten into your own head a little bit too far on the deal of a lifetime with Tracy being $6 and him being roughly close to a running back 1 or running back 2. I think realistically we are looking at now a flex play. I wouldn't be surprised if Christian is going to be benching Tracy in the next coming weeks or finding a trade partner for this man. He's going to be missing Brian right now because you need someone to buy into this Giants team. And right now, the big owner of that Giants team and that buy-in is Christian, just due to the fact that he has a keeper on it. Though, it's only $6. And again, if you got Tracy in the draft for $6, you might say to yourself, well, that was a good pick. But if you see the results you saw now, you'd be like, well, shit, that was a bad pick. The reasons being is, like, he's playing behind a bad line, an erratic quarterback, 2 other running backs that are also splitting his carries per situation. We still have Dingletary out there. Cam Skattebo, for as much as Christian says doesn't matter, is mattering at least a little bit and stealing some of those carries. There could be a world not too long from now. I mean, if you look at the other 2 backs that are there, we are in a standard league, which is probably partially why Christian always wants us to be a PPR league, but I could see a world where Dingletary and Skattebo become the goal line back. They are the bigger guys out of the 3 of them, I should say, out of Tracy at least. So that kind of limits potentially where Tracy can go. Tracy's just got to find something. He's got to be either that receiving back just so he has a purpose. He needs to get better quarterback play. So I'm assuming Christian is hoping and praying for Dart to come in, or Jameis Winston, or anything but Russell Wilson. it was just not a great showing. And the Commanders' defense is not one that you would be like, well, that's terrifying. They've got a good defensive coach, but they don't have enough talent to be that good. So this is really falls solely on the Giants, and I bet buyer's remorse is setting in firmly right now. And then lastly, out of this group, we have Jesse with Collins. I'm the most surprised by Nico being here. I think this is the one player that I don't think is going to be here for very long. I think that Nico's talent will overcome, but Nico's situation is bad. The Texans don't look good. The offensive line is a flag, and it looked that bad. So I think that if anything, with all the wide receiving options kind of falling off, and even Christian Kirk not playing, and you're like, wow, this is gonna be a blow up game for Nico Collins. No sirree. The running back did not work out either, so there's no relief coming. But I do expect that Collins will kind of overcome this at some point. It's the same situation. If last year was basically a bad offensive scheme, but with a better line, can a better offensive scheme with a worse line overcome? We're really going to find that out. But I have higher hopes for Jesse and Nico Collins than others in this group. So that kind of wraps up our great, good, and bad showings. Again, I'll go back to the very top. Those great showings being Mayfield, Achane, Puka, and Kyren Williams. Those, that was good-ish. Showings were Jaden Daniels, Chase Brown, Bucky Irving, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas, Sam Laporta, and Ladd McConkey. And those bad showings were Joe Burrow, Tyrone Tracy, and Nico Collins. So that is kind of a bit of a status report of our keepers. Again, we spend at least the 2 weeks before the draft thinking about them. But we spend a lot of time thinking about them and making sure that we're making the right decisions. And it's only right for us to want to check in and see how they're doing. They have feelings too. So with that is going to conclude our week 1 of the Podly Weekly. More information, obviously more insights to come as we go along. I'm going to save myself kind of those like week 1 early reactions for some of the teams, the big reveals, that sort of thing. And I want to do my own kind of recap of what I feel like the best teams are, kind of a projection, some takes that I want to take in the next coming weeks as we get more information, probably next week. I always do an episode where I do some wild takes, and I always say I'm going to come back to this, and I always forget to come back to us. But this time, just like the Bengals offensive line, I'm going to come back to the takes that I made, and we'll periodically check in on them throughout the year. That might be next week. That might be the following week, but it'll come. It'll come very soon. As always, thank you for listening to the Podly. Can't wait to listen to Wilson Time. Can't wait to listen to Gobby Talks. Can't wait for week 2. So love that we have football back. It felt so good to have it all back. It felt so good to do this today. And I'll be talking to you all next time.